Hey, Sean, I'm coming live to do this bid. I got a phone call today asking for a bid for a video project. And as I was going to go through the process of putting together my numbers, I thought this might be something fun to do live so you can see the actual process. I've made a few videos, especially lately, about how I do my pricing, and they tend to get a lot of questions and I would say a lot of views, but it's not always the case. But I wanted to walk through my process and sort of do it live. And so forgive the somewhat raw and unpolished nature of my background and stuff. But if you want a real look at what it's like to do a bid, this is what it looks like, including at some point my son may wake up and I have to stop what I'm doing and do that, whether it's pricing or a video feed, or in this case, both. So to get started, a brief overview of the project. It's a project for a children's science art program where they're going to be demonstrating the science of music. And this is going to be an intro to some programming. This will be like a 2-minute video that gets played before they do these different programs. And it's supposed to introduce the program so the kids know what's coming with all these programs, as well as some educators giving them a good idea of what's to come. And what other programs are available. So it's kind of an introduction to the series. It's going to have a handful of interviews. It's going to have a bunch of B-roll of different experiments and things that happen. They build musical instruments out of recycled materials, things like that. So they want to show some of these things in a big montage. Maybe have some animated music notes and sound waves and talk about the science of it. They've got something apparently they do with fire to demonstrate sound waves with fire, which sounds pretty cool. But we would need footage of that and stuff. So after this conversation about what is the video going to be, I was explaining that they said it's a 2-minute video, but that really doesn't matter to me as much when I price a project. The final length of the video, whether it's 2 minutes or 10 minutes, what affects the price more, as you'll see in a minute, is how long does it take us to capture the assets we need. And if it's the kind of thing where it's a 30-second video, but it's going to take 10 full days to shoot, that's going to be way more expensive than a 15-minute video that we can shoot in one day. And so when people call and they're like, well, this is only going to be this long video, it's like, well, is that a 1 minute of somebody just talking straight to the camera, or is that 1 minute of intense multiple location B-roll filming, voiceover, stuff like that? So when someone asks how much does it cost to make a 2-minute video, I always have to ask more. But my last question that I asked them was, what is the budget? And they had asked me, like, could you give me some numbers, what to expect? And I was saying, it's the kind of thing where if you're doing a video project, I'm not going to charge more for the same video. Like, I don't want to know your budget so I can ask for that. I want to know your budget because to do a video with interviews, let's just say it's someone talking to camera, you can do that with just a camera on a tripod against a wall. You can do that for real cheap. We can be in and out. If you want to add 2 cameras, if you want to have, a great lighting setup and a dedicated audio sound location mixer, all these different things are more people and more money. So rather than say, to do an interview costs X, it's really how much polish do you want? How many people are going to be involved in the set? How many days are we going to have to bring that crew out? That's what affects the price. And so could we do something for $3,000? Yeah, it is going to look different than doing a very similar thing, but for $10,000, where we can bring more people to spend more time on each individual layer of it to get the lighting just right and, super professional. That's not something you can rush, and you have to come in and, look around the room and analyze things and make your decision. And so if you're doing that, if you're trying to cram this into a single day with a single person, there's going to be things that you just don't have time for. And so that's why I asked the budget question. So it's not that a 2-minute video we can make for X. It's, well, we can make it for Y and we can make it for Z or anywhere in between. What's your budget? And we'll work backwards from there. So I'm going to do this pretty quickly. This whole thing should take about 10 minutes. If you have any questions about the process at all, throw them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them live if they happen during the broadcast, or throw them in the comments if you're watching this later. But the first thing I do, I have a spreadsheet which is my video budget creator. And there's 3 options, and it's the same formulas and everything. And there's some pre-populated things in all of these, and I'll zoom in a little bit for you. But for each option, there's a pre-production section. Then below that is a production section. And lastly, obviously, a post-production section. I'll explain what these things mean as I build it. But with 3 options, what I typically try to do is have a pretty cheap option. Options 1 and 2, I think, are pretty reasonable typically for the client. And then I always like to put in an option 3 to explain this is, if we could have more budget, this is what we'd be capable of. And then after I make this sheet and walk through these 3 things with them, I always make a video and I send the video to them of me explaining the options. So they're going to look at this and they're going to see that option 1, has, 1 day of DP with gear. Option 2 may have 2 days, and then maybe one of the days has an extra camera op. So rather than just look at that, I will make a video that explains to them, hey, option 1 is just, me coming out with a camera and a tripod. Option 2, we're going to be able to bring a dedicated camera operator for a second angle. We're going to be able to walk around and follow somebody. We're going to have 2 cameras move. It'll look different. And so I always make a video that explains that. So that way they're not just looking at a spreadsheet and trying to guess how that'll affect the final project, because if that's what they're doing, they typically pick the cheapest one, and that's not any fun. So with this case, it's a nonprofit. With nonprofits, a lot of times I don't do a full hour of pre-production. However, this is going to be what's going to make or break this video in particular is if we have to film all the B-roll. A, that's difficult to do safely and quickly right now during the pandemic. But B, if they have a bunch of video of these things happening and of these, classes and demonstrations, if they already have that, that's going to save us a ton of filming time. And so option 1 is going to assume that we'll be given a ton of this stuff for B-roll, and we can focus all of our time or most of our time on getting some good interviews and getting good audio and like having a decent setup for interviews, and maybe doing a little bit of on-location stuff and just some general B-roll of their facility, not really full of students, not taking the time to coordinate all this stuff. So for pre-production, I'm going to put in just a 0.5. And what this means typically for me is if I put a 1 here, that's like a standard. I don't like to break it out hourly, but if I have to do a bunch of coordination to bring different people together at the same time, that's what pre-production is and all that scheduling. And if looking down the list, I'm not going to do this, but we're not going to have meetings and go over ideas. We're not going to write a script. They're providing all that. We're definitely not going to do storyboards for any of this because it's mostly interview based. And if they're providing the stuff, we don't have to worry about that. So for the sake of this being a nonprofit and stuff, I'm going to say pre-production and the coordination we'll have to do, we can do it for that $250. And that brings us to the production side of things. And so because this is going to be pretty nimble, they know what they're doing. They've got a marketing department. They know the message they're trying to send, and they'll have somebody on location who can make sure that that message stays where they need it to stay. We're not going to need a producer. I will serve as director. So this is the bare bones. I'm going to say we're going to shoot 1 day. So we'll need a DP with all my gear, and my day rate for a full day is $1,500 if I bring all of my gear. It won't be as intense with the lighting. I'm not going to bring, 4 different lights and build that all out. I'll probably bring 2, maybe 3. We'll hopefully use a lot of natural light to speed things up and set up in a cool location. We're not going to bring any ACs, no grips, no PAs. We're not going to have a dedicated sound person. This is going to be pretty lean. And then we're not going to rent any gear. We don't need to travel. There's no craft services. So option 1's going to be pretty slim here. And when we come down to post-production, here's what these things are. So the library build is if we're shooting something where we know we're capturing a bunch of footage and later we want to reference that, I love to build a library where we do tons of metadata tagging. And that's what I love about Final Cut is we can build a library for somebody and go through every shot one time and say, this is outdoor, it's a wide shot, it's from a drone, this is a tripod shot, it's indoor, it's of their facilities, this has people smiling, this is a handshake, this is a discussion. You can put multiple tags on all the clips. And what that lets you do is later if somebody's like, hey, can we edit together a video where, we show this product really quickly? If we've built this library right, we can save hours and hours instead of having to go through everything again and look at every clip. With a couple clicks, we can say, hey, I want to see the outdoor shots that were shot on a tripod and I want to see, the machinery inside and the executives in a meeting. And we have all of that already tagged, and so quickly I can see just the relevant clips. So that's what library building is, and in this case, we're not going to need it. $2,000 is what I typically say a video edit costs. That usually covers around 2, maybe 3 days of work with sending a revision, waiting for feedback, and going back and forth like that. So that's what it looks like. So I'm gonna say we'd be able to do this with just that video edit. For the colorist, we're not gonna have color. We're trying to save money on this one. There's no VFX, no sound design, no music. And the other thing that I didn't put in here on this one, and I guess it's technically under VFX, but I would break it out, is an animator. And if they want these music notes appearing on the screen and stuff, that's gonna be a little tough. Or that would be a separate thing that we would put a line item in for post-production. So I can say at this point, $3,750 will get me to edit this video. It'll come out, it'll be a day of shooting some interviews, and we'll get a little bit of B-roll in there. It's not going to be a lot. It's going to take a little bit of production to coordinate when these interviews are. And especially now with COVID and trying to film safely, there's a little bit of extra work to make sure that things happen with distance, and it slows everything down. So that's why this pre-production is going to cover some of the time it takes to make sure that everything is arranged and cleaned before and after. So that's what we're looking at. So option 2 is when we're going to build it out just a little bit more, which is going to take more effort. So we're going to say we're charging the full $500 for general pre-production, but everything else is the same. We're not going to do, shot list or storyboards. A lot of it's going to be sort of move and groove, run and gun. But the difference is we're going to shoot for, we'll say, 2 days. And on one of the days, we're going to bring an extra camera person. So what this probably looks like is coming out and shooting interviews, and I'll shoot those by myself to save money, to save them $1,000. But then we'll do a day of B-roll where we're filming different demonstrations, maybe all this footage that they're going to want to tell that story. And to make it as comprehensive as possible and to really get the most value out of that time, I'm going to bring a second camera op for that day. And so one day is just me, one day is 2 people. So we're looking at $4,000 on the production side of things, plus the 500. And then again, the video edit's going to be about the same. We'll just have a little bit more footage to deal with. Now at this point, I'm looking at my total cost is $6,500, and they said they wanted to keep it below $5,000. And so looking at this, there's just not a way to do this if we have to film these demonstrations. So for this one, I'm going to get rid of the second camera op, and now we've got it right at $550, which is technically above their budget, but unfortunately that's the way it has to be if we're going to do this. But what this does is it gets us a full day of interviews, and it gets us a day of being able to shoot B-roll in a more dedicated way, get some of these demonstrations, take a few hours in the morning to shoot one thing and, midday, and really give us some room if we don't have all these assets being provided to us like we're assuming for option 1. So I'm okay with that, and that puts us at $5,500. And then here is where we get to play a little bit more. And so I'm going to say this is going to be $500 again. Even though this is going to take quite a little bit more to do some animations, this is our pie in the sky. Let's make the best video we can, regardless of the budgetary restrictions. But still, I'm not going to bother doing storyboards or shot listing and paying someone to do that. We're still going to rely on them for the direction on the day. And so we're going to say 2 days of filming. This is when we'll add a second person, and we'll keep it modest, and we'll say just that second day when we're shooting B-roll, that's when we'll have 2 people, and I'll still shoot the interviews by myself. No dedicated sound person because we're trying to save money. Still no crafty. Still not doing a library build, but here's where it's going to be a little different. One, we've still got our video edit. We're not going to color it, but we are going to add in $1,500 for some animation. And from this could be one of 2 things. This could be paying an animator to come in and do some light 2D animation where they're doing music notes or, a sound wave or something that's coming through. Or we can use these funds toward getting some stock footage animation of these things. I mean, stock footage of sound waves and music notes, all this stuff exists. All these assets exist already. And so if we can just take them, then we'll be good. And so that's what this budget would go to, would be buying several clips to make sure that we can really polish it up and add that beautiful animated flair that people are looking for on those higher end videos. And with any of these, we're not doing custom music or anything like that. We may find a little something in the background, but since this is a sound-based project, this whole science thing is talking about the science of sound, I'm going to assume that, like, when I work with the symphony and stuff like that, that they have a library of their own music, stuff that they've used for other promotion things, stuff that's related to their programming that they'll be able to provide me as a music bed for the video. So I'm not going to include anything there, and we're not going to do anything with sound design. And so this gives us 3 options now, where we have the lower end option, which is just coming out to shoot some interviews, and we'll rely on B-roll and photos and stuff like that to tell the story on top of that. That's at $3,750. Middle of the road, where it's still just me shooting the whole thing, but I'm going to be able to come out on 2 days, film all the interviews on one, get B-roll on the other. That's going to be $5,500. And then this other one, we're going to add a second person to really get some special B-roll and to use time a little bit more efficiently. And on that note, when we have 2 people film something, it's not just that we can film more as far as there's now 2 angles of everything, and we can have somebody dedicated to a wide and somebody dedicated to a tight, so you have that shot variety. But additionally, because we're shooting it that way, rather than me have to by myself change lenses, shoot everything, change lenses, shoot everything again, it lets us capture everything faster, which means that we can shuffle more things through the schedule, because instead of taking, an hour and a half to film something comprehensively and get coverage, we can do it in, 30 minutes, because we're not changing lenses, or at least not multiple times. And we've got, coverage, so we can take a demonstration and really quickly have everything we need from that. So that's what we're doing on that end with the B-roll day. And then again, we're adding $1,500 to do some assets to really add a little bit of sheen to it, little tiger blood on the end. So those are our 3 options. And then again, I will take these and put them into a document that I lay out, which sort of describes what's included with them. And I don't typically provide this spreadsheet to clients because I don't like people nitpicking, and good clients just trust. When I have a client who wants to go through this, it's typically going to be a bad relationship every step of the way. Our prices aren't ridiculous, and so when somebody says, $1,370 or $3,750, what is that being used for? Could we knock it down to $35? It's like, I don't want to have that. If you're having that argument, we're going to have more arguments later, and we're not going to value the project. We're just going to be focused on money. So I send a different document that outlines what is the goal of the project, how do these options serve that goal, and then what are the actual differences in deliverables. So explaining that option 3 has 2 days of filming, one with 2 people shooting B-roll, versus option 1, which is 1 day of just interviews and relying on everything being provided. Explaining that option 3 has animation included into it, whether that's custom or stock assets. So I'll send them that document that explains it from that end without really going through the back end of where these things break down. And then again, I make a video walking through that document that I send them, and I don't know how often they get viewed first. I bet a lot of people just open up the document, look at it, and say, oh, that's our budget, we'll do that one, and they ignore the other parts of it. So those are the things I send them. I send a video that explains these things, and I send a cleaned up document that shows these prices a little differently rather than this spreadsheet. So if you have any questions to, I guess, the one viewer watching, throw them in the comments. Otherwise, that is how I do a bid. And I will clean this up and send it to them. It's 5:30, so I'll probably send it in the morning, so it doesn't show how I never stop working and how I don't have a responsible work-life balance sometimes when I'm working around kidnaps. Whoa, not like kidnapping, but when my kid is napping is when I get to work on things like this. So, but then again, if they find this video, the gig's up. So that's all I got. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions about any of the things that happen, now you can throw them in the comments, and I'll go back and answer them later in the comments, but not live. So thanks for hanging out. See you later. Bye.